we want to track the contracts, track the renewals, and then track what the vendor is doing to make sure that they're completing what they're supposed to do, and then pay them according to their completed milestones or obligations. So all of this can be done in D365 with the portal. So the first thing we do at the very top there is the vendor would, if you want to register a vendor, you would have them go to the portal, submit a vendor register, ask for a login first. Then when you assign them a login, they go and they apply to be an approved vendor. Right? And you can review that, and then you can approve it. And then once they're an approved vendor now, they can see what tenders are available to award. And so they would go into the portal, they would see the tenders, they would submit, right? They can upload documents, they can fill in fields, just like some of the portals we were looking at already. And then once it comes in, we can use the CRM capabilities to do all of the interactions with those vendors. So we can track emails, we can have appointments, we can track communication, phone calls, any tasks or activities related to the process of reviewing and awarding those tenders. And then finally, once we award it, we can have automatic emails that go out. We use Power Automate to actually send those. And then we will have to get into maybe drafting some contracts, right? So we could use SharePoint to track the different contract components. We can collaborate using Word with change tracking turned on. And then at the end of the day, we end up with a contract that we award. And then what we do in the contract is we track these obligations. So obligations could be vendor side or our side, things that we need to do to meet the requirements of the contract, milestones, and then payments. And usually the payments are referenced to the milestone, right? So when the vendor, so what happens is when the vendor completes a certain stage, somebody's going to go in there and say, yes, this milestone was completed, and then you can even integrate that to your ERP system to automatically release a payment. Okay, so all of that can be done using the same tools we've already showed you. Now this one here is a little more dated. This is the same portal, but it's an older version. It's fairly simplistic looking, but you can see here where they can view the tenders. They submit, they select them, they can submit, upload. So all of these fields can be defined by you, right? What data do you want to capture when they're submitting these tenders? And then all of that stuff goes into the back end. And then you would use the functionality of D365 to actually process those things. So what I'll do is actually just briefly here bring you into, show you kind of what that D365 environment looks like a little bit. So this is D365. As I mentioned earlier, it is using the same Power Platform. Okay, it's like a pre-configured Power App, if you will. This is the dashboard, so I can see here if this is a contract management scenario. I can see what active tenders I have. I can see what tenders I have in various stages. I can see when they're closing, and then I can see how many bids I have in each stage, and then some of the active tenders that I have in the system. Okay, if I go to a tender here, actually it would be nicer if one of the things you can also do with these dashboards, which is quite cool, is you can interact directly with them. So if I wanted to, I can expand it so it makes it a little easier to read. The other thing we can do is we can actually drill into it and look at the records associated with the chart. So if I want to see, I can click on the closed tenders and it will filter the data on the right to match what I've selected in the chart. So that is the actual tender that we have that's closed already for some lawn maintenance. If I open the tender, you'll see some common things to what we saw in the PowerPoint slide earlier, right? Look at the flow up there, okay? So that's the same flow, it's a business process, but it's different in that the steps are not the same. This is defined specifically for this scenario. So we've got a proposed, released, closed, right? So this is in other words, this tender is it's closed, but we haven't selected who won it yet. It just means it's closed for people can't bid on it anymore, right? And then once we've selected who the vendor is, then it'll be completed from a tender perspective, because then we're into contract management after that. So we can see the information here. This information, and then we can see what bids have been submitted against this one. Probably not a good example. Let's just pick a different one. Maybe this one. So this one here has more bids. So we can see that there's these 4 vendors who have submitted a bid against this tender. And if I want to, I can drill in any one of these. So I could see that these 3 of them lost, and then 1 was selected. So you can see we're in the selection stage on this particular tender. Okay. And if I go click on this particular bid, then I can see the details of the bid. Right? So this would have come from the vendor. This is information they would have provided on the portal when they submitted. Now, you'll notice there's a timeline here. So we saw that a little bit in the PowerPoint when we were looking at the customer service scenario, where they were putting notes and stuff in. So the timeline allows us to capture basically all of the real work, the activities that our employees are doing related to this particular thing. So, I mean, not an ideal example, but this particular tender response or bid, any communication we would have had. So if I had a phone call with this individual, then I would have recorded it here, for example. So I could pick, discussed timeline, and then I can put some additional information in here, right? Oh, YouTube. Can't remember who it was, but we'll just pick somebody here. That's fine. We'll save it. So now if I go back on the timeline, I can see that the phone call's been recorded there. Now, in this case, I'm in D365 and I'm doing those activities. But one of the things you can also do is you can interact directly with it from within Outlook. So if I go in Outlook now, and I'm trying to find here a good example. Okay, so this is an email from one of my customers, okay? Now, I received this email from GW, and he's saying, hey, when do you have time to meet about this customer portal? There's a Dynamics 365 button in here. So if I click on that, what it does, it goes into the 365, and it looks to see if it can find GW in there, right? Because we know his email address. So there it is, it says, yeah, I have a record for GW in here. You even have an opportunity in there for this customer. So what I can do is just automatically go set regarding here. If I do that, then this will automatically get sent to D3. So it'll show up in the timeline in D365 under GW's contact and under the account for the customer, right? So I can actually do it right from within Outlook. You can also do things like, if I wanted to from this email, I could initiate any one of these activities. Now, case doesn't show up here because in this particular scenario we don't have it, but it could. So you could actually create a case directly from the email. And then that email gets tracked directly on that case. And not only the email, but any subsequent responses to that email, so the entire email chain after that would automatically get tracked against the same object. So in this scenario of the tender we were just looking at, if we had an email in there, then any sort of response to that email would automatically show up in the timeline also. Okay. Now the other cool thing about this particular app and Power Apps in general is that you can use it on your phone and it looks almost identical. Let's see if I can show you this just quickly. All right, so this is the Dynamics 365 app. You could download that from the App Store as well. But if I log in now, I should have probably uploaded this one of the same environments I was demoing there to you. But so this is another environment for one of my other customers. But there is the dashboard is in here. If you look at the menu in here, see that menu? That menu is the same menu as we would see when we were in here. That menu on the left here is the same menu we're going to see on the phone. Okay, it just occupies the whole phone screen when I open it. And then if we wanted to, for example, go into one of these customers, so I'm going to do a search here. So that's because it wants to use my, because I'm doing it from my PC, it wants to use my PC keyboard. Now you can use the star, the asterisk, we'll do like an in-string search for that anywhere. So I'm going to go and find this customer, and then I can select the customer. We can see information about this customer here. Okay, we got some charts, we got the contacts for this customer. We got various tabs in here about the customer, their sales and activity, their contacts, connections, all sorts of things. And then we would have a timeline there as well. So if I go to the timeline for this customer, it's just like what we were seeing on the screen in there, except you have a few extra features on your phone. So if I wanted to create a note here, I could, you notice that there's like a little, you notice right here, I could take a picture, I could take a video, I could do a sound recording, or I could do an attachment. So you take a picture with your phone and attach it directly to that timeline. Okay, and then that's it's automatic. So whether you're using the back end or the phone, it's going to record that on the timeline. It's in real time. Okay, so. And the nice thing is, that phone app just comes with it. There's no extra configuration, almost zero extra configuration you have to do to make the phone app work. It's the same interface. So if you add stuff, it will appear on the phone at the same time it appears in the web browser version. Okay, it's all the same configuration. I mention that because it wasn't always that way. Several years ago, they actually had a configuration for the mobile, which was separate from the interface that you're using in the web browser. So that meant that you had to do that work potentially twice. So what they came up with is this concept of a unified interface, and it works dynamically. So if you're in a web browser, then it uses the available space. It's got more real estate. When you're using the phone, it just stacks the columns on top of each other, so you end up with one, that's why you kind of have to scroll up or down a little more on your phone, but you're used to that. So it works. Okay. All right. Now, actually, this is interesting too. When I log into this app, like the D365 app, you'll notice that there's all these different apps in here. So you can package up subsets of functionality as apps that are based on the same tenant. So all of these apps are actually the same D365 environment. But for example, we're rolling out Gilded Paper. They make the world's largest manufacturer of shirts, actually, t-shirts and polo shirts and stuff like that. So these guys, they have an office in Barbados, but they also have they have sales office in China. So we're deploying the China office now. And there's some things obviously that the China office are going to need or use that they don't use in the US office. So we created separate apps for them. So it allows us to slightly modify some of the objects that are available in one app versus the other. There's also a language overlay. So if you're using the Chinese version, you could actually switch to the Chinese language and it would convert everything you've seen on the screen into Chinese characters. Okay, and it supports most languages. I think about 40 of them or something like that. So that's the mobile app. So really that kind of brings it towards the end of our presentation for today, barring Q&A. So if anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer those, and then we can let everybody head on back to work. And interestingly, we're probably not going to have many. I suspect that in the near future, we're not going to have gatherings like this or these types of conferences for a little while. If what happens in the rest of the world, I think it eventually ends up here. So,
yeah.
I don't have a question to say, but just I see a lot of potential for it and answer. It's just a matter of we are engaging still in the deployment of the 365.
Well, you guys use Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations as well, which is a different component of that. But I heard you had a CRM deployment somewhere at one point, or you were working on it.
Probably some of the sectors, but I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
But we do have an optimization initiative coming down the latter half of this year, and I do see a lot of potential for this because a lot of the requests from the business relates to sort of basically the scheduling and flow of various.
Absolutely, yeah. And you guys have an advantage when you're fairly large. You probably have an IT team. So the nice thing about tools like this is you can standardize on these tools and use them in probably all of your different companies. So you can standardize that skill set and use it for solve a lot of different problems in different parts of your group.
Your presentation made me a lot of questions, but for my internal team, because when I look at the some of the things you present, like the bot and the agent, we have a bit of all those things, but we use multiple providers, which is not cost effective.
Correct. And that's kind of goes back to what I was just saying to you, which is when you look at D365 and this platform, you start to realize that I can do a lot of stuff with this. Right, and it's exactly that. So there's an app you can get out there that'll just do case management. There's one you can get out. You can go buy a contract management system. You can, there's different solutions for all that. But then you're dealing with integration. You're dealing with different knowledge sets. So it's pretty hard in most of our organizations to build real expertise around 4 or 5 complex applications. But you could afford maybe to invest in one, right? And then use that in a lot of the different areas. And I think that's one of the strengths of the platform. So we look at, like in Belize, I mentioned them, we're using it for a lot of different things there in Social Security, but they also use it as an HR man. They use it for HR as well. So they manage all their employees in the tool. There's an HR solution built for Dynamics 365 that they use. I showed you, there's contract lifecycle management. We've got customers that use it for sales, order processing. We have a customer locally that's using it to do tenant management in one of the malls. So they track all of their leases and tenants, and then the contracts, and then they automatically generate their monthly rental invoices out of there. I'm trying to think, is there any other scenarios that we have? Insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different applications for it.
In terms of the tender processing, I saw where you send individual emails to suppliers or whoever. In our case, where we do multiple tenders, in terms of meeting requirements of OPR, we have to, like, if there are, say, 15 bidders for a particular tender, we have to send email, like a mass email to all whenever a question is asked, in particular to a tender. So in order to be transparent, if one person asks a question, everybody has to see it.
Yeah.
When we do
so that you could do that.
And it's time so it's speakable if you want to put it.
And that's just not something that I have in my demo, but certainly like having a place where you track all those questions in a central area and then the responses, so that can be managed certainly.
We have to time even the response when it does, because if somebody didn't see it, they can claim probably you just.
Or what you do is you make, like if you're using the portal, you make the answers available on the portal. So you can send them an email as well, but also have all the Q&A right available in the portal. They could go in and look at it. So if they miss the email or whatever, they could always go and retrieve it there. You could also let them. People would just like to use email, but you can automate that too. When you get an email from that individual, as long as maybe the subject is whatever, you can automatically log the question into the tool. You can send them a confirmation that you got the question automatically using Power Automate. And then internally, you're gonna have somebody go and respond to it, and when the response is entered, yeah, you can automate the response to everybody, you can have it on a timer, or what, however you wanna manage that. Any other questions? All right, I think there was a QR code or something, that was Caroline?
Yeah,
The,
I gave it to you.
yeah, I know.
Put on your Teams. Open Teams and put on the screen. Open your Teams out.